If you enjoy this video, please consider giving a thumbs up. It really helps the channel. And if you have any ideas for future videos, share them in the comments section below. So just take a moment to allow your eyes to close and allow yourself to begin to relax. And as you begin to comfortably drift asleep, I'm just going to tell this sleep story in the background. And this is a sleep story about Ellen, and Ellen is resting on the most beautiful sandy beach. And as she rests on that sandy beach, she can feel the warmth of the sand beneath her. She can feel the way the dry sand moves between her fingertips as she gently pushes her fingers into that sand. The way the sand is cooler just underneath the surface. And she can hear the sound of the ocean rolling calmly into the shore, gently lapping onto that shore before pulling back out again to sea. The occasional sounds of birds in the air, the feeling of the breeze occasionally tickling her cheeks, that fresh, salty sea air smell as she takes each deep and comfortable breath while she relaxes deeper and deeper into the experience of resting on this beach. And as the sun comfortably moves across the sky, so the shadow from a nearby tree approaches the top of Ellen's head, and slowly, over a short period of time, she notices through her closed eyelids as the dappled light of the sun dances before her eyes, while that sun shines down through those leaves of the tree, and she just relaxes and drifts and floats so peacefully, so comfortably, deeper and deeper into a reverie. And after a little while of relaxing, drifting, and floating inside her mind, Ellen stands up. She walks down to the seashore. And as she walks down to the seashore, so she is aware of the increased sound of that sea rolling in, aware that the breeze is a little cooler nearer to the water's edge, and she walks a little way into the sea on that sand, her feet sinking gently into the sand with each step that she takes. And she walks through the edge of that water as the waves roll in across her ankles, her feet, and then pull back out again, and then roll back in again, then pull back out again. With that regularity, those waves roll in and pull back out to sea again. And Ellen gazes down the coast, and she can see a little way offshore that there seems to be a whirlpool forming. And she watches as that whirlpool seems to get larger and larger. And then she sees some sparkling lights rising up from the whirlpool and can almost hear a twinkling sound as those lights spread out up into the sky, almost like a water fountain spreading out from the center of that whirlpool. And then she sees a mist, almost like sea spray, following that sparkling, filled with that sparkling, rising higher and higher into the sky. And she continues to watch. And as she watches, so she notices that there's something coming out of that whirlpool. And she sees the most beautiful looking dragon rising up from under the sea, the water glistening on its skin, dripping down back into the ocean, its wings flapping, flicking that water off, rising up from that water, flapping and rising higher and higher, and then hovering above the whirlpool as that whirlpool calms down and the sea calms down, and that dragon is just hovering above that location, above the sea. And Ellen just watches with intrigue and curiosity at the way that dragon seems to be hovering so effortlessly. And then the dragon flies down, swoops down, bending its neck, twisting around, diving, flies just above the surface of the sea, creating ripples across the surface as it flies, the tips of its wings just grazing the surface of the water, before it then flies off and seems to be able to fly so fast as it turns and flies off in the direction out to sea. And Ellen watches as it flies off towards the horizon and vanishes. And Ellen is curious about this experience. She's never seen a dragon before. She wonders for a moment whether she's still sleeping, and leans down, cups some of that sea water in her hands, closes her eyes, and splashes that sea water onto her face. And convinced that she's awake, Ellen decides she wants to try and find out more. And so she heads up the beach. And she's trying to figure out how she can find out more. And up the beach, she starts asking people whether they saw what she saw. And most of them seemed to say they didn't see anything, despite the fact that she saw a very large dragon appearing in the sky, floating, flying, despite the fact that she saw a giant whirlpool in the sea. people tell her they saw nothing. But as she's asking people whether they saw what she saw, to try to find out how she might be able to discover more, a man came over to her wearing a purple fitted suit and top hat, and the purple top hat curved at the top and seemed to almost shine in the sunlight. And the slender man in the purple suit said, "I saw what you saw, and I know how to find where the dragon was going. You need to follow me." And slightly dazed and confused at the look of this man, Ellen finds herself automatically following, and she follows this man as he walks briskly along the top of the beach and turns into some woodland, and briskly walks through the woodland. But his footsteps don't seem to make a sound. It's almost as if he's gliding. He looks like he's walking. But the way he's walking and the fact he doesn't make a sound makes it seem like he's gliding along. And as Ellen follows, she notices that, unlike the man she's following, her footsteps sound more like thuds, cracking on twigs, pushing through leaves, stumbling occasionally trying to keep up. But excited with this adventure that she's going on, she can hear the sounds of the rustling leaves around her as the wind's blowing its breeze over the tops of the trees. She follows this man through the woodland and out into a clearing. And in this clearing, she's surprised to see that there's an old-fashioned looking hot air balloon just resting there waiting for them to get on board. And there are thick ropes tying it to the ground, and there's a net seeming to hold the balloon in place, and ropes over the net, and ropes attached to the balloon, all attached to the basket. And the wicker basket is just big enough for a handful of people. And the man jumps into the basket, almost hopping over the side effortlessly. And Ellen heads to the basket, rests her hands on the side, hoiks a leg up and over into the basket, and lets gravity do the rest, as she falls over the top and lands on her feet, and decides that's as graceful as she's going to do it. And the man then releases the ropes, and with a burst of fire, the hot air balloon rises up into the sky, and it rises higher and higher. And Ellen gets to look out across the land. She can see the beach where she was just a few moments ago. She can see in the ocean where the whirlpool appeared. She can see behind all the land, the woodland, countryside, the small towns and villages dotted among the countryside, and looking off towards the horizon across the water, she can see in the distance what looks like the top of an island. And the man in the purple suit says that's where we're heading. And he lets off a bit more of that flame up into the hot air balloon. The balloon rises a little higher, and then, with silence and stillness, the balloon just travels through the air in the direction of that island. And after a while, travelling across the ocean, the island getting larger and larger in view. This man pulls on a piece of string, and the balloon begins to lower down. And he carefully directs that balloon down towards the island. And as they're descending to the island, Ellen takes a few moments to survey the island they're approaching. She can see the beautiful sandy beaches here. She can see that it appears to be hilly, almost like tiny mountains, with an area of woodland around the base of those hills. And to one side of the island appears to be a clearing. And the hot air balloon is descending towards that clearing. And as it descends towards the clearing, so Ellen holds on to the basket. And so gently the man lands that hot air balloon in the clearing. He then jumps down from the balloon holding a rope, attaches the rope to the ground, then grabs another rope, attaches that to the ground. And then does the same again twice more. And then Ellen climbs out of that hot air balloon basket. And the man says, follow me, as he dashes off across the clearing towards the woodland. And Ellen follows the man, dashing along behind him. They head into that woodland, walk through the woodland. Heading towards the base of the hills. And as they head towards the base of the hills, Ellen can hear a low rumbling sound. The man says that's the sound of the dragon breathing. And they head towards the base of those hills. And at the base of the hills, they discover a cave. And quite by surprise, the man just turns his left hand palm up. And as he does, a bright, white, glowing orb of energy, sparkling and crackling like electricity, appears hovering above his hand, illuminating the cave. The light dancing on the cave walls, that crackling of that light hovering above his hand. They walk into the cave, and while they walk into the cave, so Ellen notices the way her footsteps begin to echo, reverberate down that cave and back towards her. She's aware of the duration of the delay from the sounds she's making to those footsteps returning. And they continue heading down this tunnel through this cave. After a while, they can hear the sound of dripping water. And Ellen begins to notice that it feels a bit warmer. And a little while later, the tunnel opens out to a vast chamber. And in the far side, in the ceiling of the chamber, is a hole out to the sky. And there's a beam of light managing to penetrate down through that hole, illuminating an area of the chamber floor. And in that illuminated area is that dragon resting. And as that dragon appears to be resting, so it also appears to be glowing and pulsating. And the wizard says calmly and quietly to Ellen, "This dragon isn't meant to be here. It's come from another realm. It's found itself in this realm, and it's trying to recharge itself so that it can travel back to its natural realm. And in its natural realm, dragons reside inside hollowed out mountains. And inside their mountains, they can recharge, gain their magical strength that allows them to fly, to breathe fire or ice. And so this one has obviously travelled here, hoping to be able to recharge here. And although it can recharge in this mountain, the same as it can in its own realm, it can't recharge that fast, because this isn't the same as its own realm. It's out of sync with the energy here. And the man slowly approaches that dragon. Ellen tentatively walks into the chamber, but keeps near the wall, while the man is walking slowly towards the dragon. He gestures with his right hand, outstretched palm towards Ellen, as if to say, keep back and keep yourself calm and over there. And the dragon is breathing deeply, slowly, relaxed. The man approaches the dragon. He puts his left hand out towards the dragon He lowers himself down a little, as if to try to communicate that he's safe. He can see that dragon looking over in his direction. He walks towards the dragon's head. The dragon's breathing remains slow, calm. He rests his hand on the dragon's head. He takes some deep breaths, closes his eyes, raises his right hand up towards the sunlight, and seems to focus that sunlight magically into the palm of his hand, all the light breaking through from above, narrows down as the rest of the cave turns dark, and a beam of light that gets stronger and brighter and seems to be more full of energy spreads down through his right hand, almost making him glow as it passes through his body, and then seems to spread out from his left hand, glowing around the dragon's head, spreading that bright glow down the dragon's neck, round the dragon's legs, through the dragon's wings and body, all the way to the tip of the dragon's tail. And Ellen can hear the crackling, fizzing energy, and can see the way that energy is filling and pulsating and passing rapidly into and through that dragon. And after a few moments, the energy begins to change colour. And at that point, the man moves his right hand, almost breaking the beam of energy. The last of that energy passes through his body into the dragon. The light shines down like normal. The dragon appears to be breathing stronger. It stands to its feet. It does a long out-breath, and some smoke comes out its nostrils. The man steps back a few paces as the dragon lets out an intense, loud burst of fire from its mouth, before settling back down again. And this man says that this dragon can now have the power to find its way back to its own realm. The man said he doesn't know how a portal opened from its realm to this realm, but it'll now be able to open one to travel back. And the dragon rose up, flapped its wings, which sounded so loud up so close, and flew its way to the hole and out the hole. The man went over to Ellen, put his arm around Ellen's waist, said, "Hold on just a moment." Ellen rested an arm around his shoulders, and he leapt and seemed to almost fly up following that dragon through the hole, landing on the top of the hill, where they could see that dragon flying over the open ocean, then hovering in place, flapping its wings and hovering, then breathing a burst of flames down towards the surface of the ocean. And where it breathed down that fire, so the ocean began to spin turbulently, and a whirlpool began to form, and sparkling began to emit and spray out from that whirlpool, and then a mist formed around the center of that whirlpool, spreading out, rising up, until it looked just like it had when the dragon appeared. And at just that moment, the dragon pulled its wings in, pushed them back slightly, straightened its head and neck, put its legs back, and dived into that whirlpool. With a crash of waves, the water filled in on itself. And after a few moments of those waves spreading out from that location, it was as if nothing had ever been here. And the man said, "It's time now to journey back. We've done our bit. We've helped make sure that that dragon's back in its correct realm. So my job here is done." And Ellen asks, "Did you know that that dragon was going to appear?" And the man says, "I'm a wizard and protector of the realms. It's my job to know when there's a portal opening that shouldn't be open, and to make sure that what comes through from one realm goes back to where it came. And it's down to what's in those realms for them to address why a portal opened. He will only get involved with that as a last resort. His main role is to travel around to where portals are opening and to make sure that balance is restored." And Ellen asks, "How did you get there so quick? When and how did you become aware that the portal was opening?" And he says that he's connected with the realms and with the fabric of the realms. And so the second it begins to open, he knows exactly where it's about to open. And so he just transports himself to that location and then figures out what he has to do to correct things. And the wizard guides Ellen back to that hot air balloon. And they get into the hot air balloon. They leave the island. And they travel back towards the mainland. And as they're travelling back, Ellen asks, "You don't need the hot air balloon, do you?" And the wizard says, "No. But you wanted to come along for the ride, and I thought this would be a nice way to do it." to take in the view, and it isn't so shocking as if I had just teleported you there. And back on the mainland, Ellen got out of the hot air balloon. The wizard clicked his fingers and disappeared, and the hot air balloon disappeared. And she found herself stood in a meadow with no sign that that hot air balloon was ever here. And she walked back through the woods, back to that beach. And the sun was setting, and she sat on the sand as the air turned a little cooler. She watched as the sun set, wondering about the experience that she'd had. With it all over with, she can hardly accept that it had taken place. It was already seeming almost like a dream. And after the sun set, and she watched the stars twinkling in the sky for a little while, and the way the moonlight danced across the surface of the ocean, she headed back home, and still finding herself drifting off to thoughts about the experience that she'd had, the possibility that there are alternative realms, alternative realities, and the curiosity of what those realities might be like, what the reality is like that that dragon had come from. She tried to fight falling asleep for a little while longer so she can keep thinking about this, until eventually, the more she was fighting, the deeper and more relaxed asleep she found herself becoming, as she drifted and floated into the most peaceful, most wonderful, comfortable sleep all night long.